You there, the janitor in the back. Come up here. Now! Dr. Victoria Sinclair's voice cut through the grand pavilion of Mercy Children's Hospital like a scalpel through skin. 500 guests turned in unison. On the live stream, 1.8 million people stopped scrolling. Leonard Carter froze. His hands were still damp from mopping the corridor outside. His gray uniform clung to his back. He hadn't even finished his shift. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm not. Don't apologize. Come, here." Victoria didn't wait. She stepped off the stage, heels clicking across the polished floor, and grabbed Leonard by the arm. Not gently, not like a colleague, like someone removing an object from the wrong place. The crowd murmured. Cameras swiveled. On the screen behind the stage, Leonard's face appeared in high definition. Sweat on his forehead, confusion in his eyes. A man who cleaned floors now standing under lights, meant for donors and surgeons. Victoria pulled him onto the platform. The microphone picked up everything. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her smile wide and cold, "this is Leonard Carter. He works here. He keeps our hospital clean. He's part of the team." Scattered, polite applause. "Leonard," Victoria continued, turning to face him directly, "I noticed you watching my presentation earlier. You seemed concerned." Leonard's throat went dry. "I wasn't." "Oh, don't be modest. You were paying very close attention during the surgical demonstration. I saw you. Tell me, what did you think?" The room held its breath. Leonard looked out at the sea of faces. Donors in $1,000 suits. Surgeons who'd trained for decades. Cameras broadcasting this to nearly 2 million people. "I think," he said quietly, "the approach you presented carries a higher complication risk than necessary." The murmur grew louder. Victoria's smile didn't falter. "Higher risk. I see. And where exactly did you complete your surgical training, Leonard?" "Johns Hopkins. I was a second-year resident before you quit." Victoria's voice was gentle, deadly. "Before you walked away. And now you clean floors." She turned to the audience, hands open, as if presenting evidence. "This," she said, her voice dripping with false warmth, "is what happens when people don't finish what they start. They stand in the back. They watch. They criticize. But they don't do the work." Leonard felt the heat rise in his chest. Not anger, something colder. "My wife was dying," he said, his voice steady. "I had a newborn daughter. I made a choice. And now you're here, questioning me, in front of everyone." Victoria stepped closer. Her microphone was off. His was still live. She leaned in, her voice a whisper that 2 million people heard perfectly clearly. "Stay in your place, Leonard. People like you don't get to question people like me." The room went silent. Victoria stepped back, smile returning. "But since you're so confident, why don't you explain it to all of us? Right now. Show everyone how much you know." She handed him the microphone. Leonard stood there under the lights, holding a microphone he didn't ask for, facing a crowd that didn't know his name. And he realized this wasn't a question. It was a public execution. But what Dr. Victoria Sinclair didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that the man she just humiliated had been carrying a secret for 5 years. A secret that could destroy everything she'd built. If you want to see what happens when the invisible fight back, hit subscribe. Because what Leonard does next won't just prove her wrong, it will bring down an entire system built on lies. The air in the grand pavilion felt too thin, too bright, too watched. And Leonard Carter, the man who cleaned floors, was about to make the most dangerous choice of his life. 5 years earlier, Leonard Carter had been someone else entirely. He had been Dr. Leonard Carter, second-year surgical resident at Johns Hopkins Hospital, one of the most competitive pediatric surgery programs in the country. He had been the kind of resident attending physicians pulled aside to say, "Keep going like this, and you'll be running your own OR in 10 years. His hands were steady. His mind was sharp. His future was certain. His wife, Claire, taught piano at a community arts center in Baltimore. She had the kind of quiet brilliance that didn't need a stage. She could take a frightened 6-year-old who'd never touched an instrument and, within 3 months, have them playing simple melodies with confidence. She made people believe in themselves. When Claire got pregnant, they were ready. They had saved money. They had a small house with a nursery painted soft green. They had names picked out, lists of books they'd read together, a future they could see clearly. But in the 3rd trimester, Claire started feeling wrong. Not pregnancy tired, something deeper, something hollow. The oncologist used words like aggressive and advanced and limited option, acute myeloid leukemia, stage 4. They could start chemotherapy immediately, but the pregnancy complicated everything. If they waited until after birth, the cancer would spread beyond treatment. If they started now, the baby might not survive. Claire didn't hesitate. "We wait," she said. Leonard tried to argue, tried to find another way, tried to be both a doctor and a husband, and discovered he couldn't be either. Claire carried Valeria to 32 weeks. The baby was born premature, underweight, her lungs struggling to fill with air, but alive. Claire started chemotherapy 3 days later. Leonard tried to keep working, tried to be present in the OR, present at Claire's bedside, present for Valeria's first moments of life. He ran on 4 hours of sleep, then 3, then none. He made it 6 weeks before his hands started shaking during a routine suture. His program director pulled him aside. "You need to take a leave, Leonard. I can handle it." "No, you can't. And that's not a judgment. That's reality." Leonard looked at his hands, hands that had once been steady enough to operate on a newborn's heart. Now they trembled, holding a coffee cup. He resigned the next day. Claire fought for 8 months. She fought with everything she had. But the leukemia was faster. She died on a cold morning in March, in a hospice room that smelled like lavender and failure. Her last words weren't to Leonard. They were about him. "Make sure he doesn't forget." She whispered to the nurse, "Make sure he knows he did the right thing." After the funeral, Leonard moved to Nashville with Valeria. He sold everything they didn't need. He applied for jobs that didn't ask questions, didn't require explanations, didn't care that his medical career had ended in the middle of a sentence. He became a janitor at Mercy Children's Hospital, not because he couldn't do anything else, but because the hours were stable, the work was invisible, and it let him be there when Valeria needed him. For 5 years, it worked. He cleaned floors in a building where he used to wear scrubs. He walked past operating rooms where he used to save lives. And he stayed silent until tonight, because Valeria was sick. She had been born with a ventricular septal defect, a hole in the wall between the 2 lower chambers of her heart. For the first few years, doctors monitored it, hoping it would close on its own. It didn't. Now, at 6 years old, Valeria needed surgery. Soon. And the hospital where Leonard worked, the hospital where Dr. Victoria Sinclair performed her celebrated procedures, was the only place with the resources to do it. That was why Leonard had stayed silent for so long. That was why he cleaned floors in a place where he once belonged. That was why he had watched Dr. Sinclair build a reputation on techniques he knew were flawed, and said nothing. Because his daughter's life depended on staying invisible. But tonight, standing on that stage, Leonard had made a different choice, and there was no going back. Backstage, Leonard stood alone in a narrow service hallway. The gala continued inside. Applause, music, the hum of a machine built to turn suffering into donations. His phone buzzed. A text from the pediatric ward nurse. "Valeria's asking for you. Everything okay?" Leonard stared at the message. His hands were still shaking. "Running late," he typed back. "Tell her I'll call soon." Another lie. He was getting good at those. A security guard appeared at the end of the hallway. "Mr. Carter." Leonard turned. "You need to leave the building. Immediately. I work here. Not anymore. Your supervisor has been notified. You're suspended pending internal review." The word "suspended" hit like a fist to the stomach. For what? The guard didn't answer. He just gestured toward the exit. Leonard walked past the service elevator, past the supply closet where he'd stored his equipment for 3 years, past the employee break room where he'd eaten lunch alone more times than he could count. He pushed through the exit door into the cold night air. The parking lot was nearly empty. Streetlights buzzed overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Leonard sat on the curb and stared at his phone. He could call the nurse back. He could try to explain. He could pretend everything was fine. But nothing was fine. He had just challenged one of the most powerful surgeons in the country on a live stream in front of 2 million people, and his daughter was still inside that building, waiting for a surgery that might never happen now. Leonard buried his face in his hands. He had done the right thing. But right didn't mean safe, and it didn't mean his daughter would survive. By morning, Leonard's phone had exploded. 43 missed calls, over 200 text messages, notifications from apps he didn't remember downloading. He sat at the small kitchen table in his apartment, scrolling through the wreckage. The first headline made his chest tighten. Janitor disrupts hospital gala, accuses renowned surgeon of malpractice. The article was short, brutal, and completely one-sided. It described the Hearts of Hope event, Dr. Sinclair's presentation, and Leonard's interruption. The word interruption appeared 3 times. There was no mention of his medical background, no mention of the specific concern he'd raised, just the image of a janitor questioning a surgeon. At the bottom, a statement from Mercy Children's Hospital. We are aware of the incident that occurred during last night's event. The individual in question is not a medical professional and does not represent the standards of this institution. We are conducting an internal review. Not a medical professional. Leonard read the line again. They were erasing him, not just firing him, erasing the fact that he'd ever been anything more than someone who cleaned floors. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered, Mr. Carter, this is Jennifer Cross from Channel 5 News. We'd love to have you on our morning show to discuss what happened last night. I'm not interested. The public is very curious about your side of the story. Then they'll stay curious. He hung up. 3 more calls came within minutes. Different reporters. Same pitch. Leonard turned off his phone, but the damage was already spreading. By noon, the narrative had solidified. News sites ran stories with eerily similar language. Sources close to the situation claimed Leonard had planned the disruption, that he was seeking attention, that his accusations were baseless. None of it was true. By afternoon, the hospital's legal team made their move. A courier delivered an envelope to Leonard's apartment. Inside was a formal suspension notice, no pay, indefinite duration, and at the bottom, a warning in bold text, unauthorized contact with hospital staff, patients, or media may result in immediate termination and legal action. Leonard set the letter down on the table. No job, no income, no access to the hospital where his daughter was a patient. He called the pediatric ward. The nurse who answered sounded hesitant. Mr. Carter, I wasn't sure you'd call. I need to know how Valeria is. She's stable, but there's been a note placed on her file. I'm not authorized to discuss details with anyone not listed as an approved contact. I'm her father. I know. But administration has flagged the account. You'll need to speak with patient services. Leonard's throat went dry. Can I at least talk to her? Let me check. 5 minutes passed, then 10. A different voice came on the line. Male. Administrative. Mr. Carter, this is Gregory Mills, head of patient services. Given the current situation, all communication with your daughter will need to be supervised and documented. Supervised? For everyone's protection. We'll arrange scheduled calls. You'll receive the details early next week. She's 6 years old. I just want to say goodnight. I understand. But these are the protocols we need to follow. The line went dead. Leonard sat in the kitchen, staring at the phone in his hand. They were using Valeria as leverage. If he stayed quiet, they'd let him see her. If he pushed back, they'd make it harder. That was the game. And Leonard Carter had just realized he was playing it alone, but he wasn't alone for long. The next afternoon, Leonard's phone rang again. Different area code. He almost didn't answer. "Mr. Carter? My name is Diane Espinoza. I'm an attorney. I specialize in whistleblower cases. I'd like to help you." Leonard sat up. "I can't afford a lawyer. I'm not asking for payment. I work with a nonprofit that represents people who speak up and get punished for it. People like you. I'm not a whistleblower. I'm a janitor who asked a question. You're a trained surgeon who identified a dangerous flaw in a medical procedure and was retaliated against for doing so. That makes you exactly what I represent." Leonard was quiet. "Mr. Carter, I've been following what's happening to you. The suspension, the media spin, the way they're framing you as someone who doesn't know what he's talking about, that's illegal, and I can prove it. What do you want me to do? Meet with me. Let me show you what your options are. After that, the choice is yours." Leonard hesitated. "Where?" "Anywhere you feel safe. There's a diner 2 blocks from my apartment. Sullivan's. I'll be there in an hour." She hung up. Leonard sat for a long moment, then stood and pulled on his jacket. An hour later, he sat across from Diane Espinoza in a corner booth at Sullivan's Diner. She was sharp-eyed, mid-30s, dressed like someone who'd spent years in courtrooms and knew how to win. She didn't waste time. "The hospital is trying to bury you," she said. "You understand that, right?" Leonard nodded. "They've already started controlling the narrative. Janitor disrupts event. Unqualified man questions expert. They're painting you as someone who doesn't know what he's talking about. I was a surgical resident at Johns Hopkins. I know. I pulled your records. 2 years of exceptional evaluation. Letters of recommendation from 3 attending physicians. You didn't just know what you were talking about. You were one of the best they'd seen. So why didn't anyone mention that? Because it doesn't fit the story they're selling. If people knew you were a trained surgeon, the whole narrative collapses. So they erase it." Leonard looked out the window. A woman walked past pushing a stroller. Normal life. The kind he used to have. "What do I do?" he asked. "You fight. Not in the press. In court. We file a wrongful termination. We force them to prove that what you said was wrong. And if I lose, then you lose. But if you don't fight, you've already lost." "What about Valeria?" "We file for emergency access. Make sure they can't use her as leverage. That could take weeks. It could. But it's better than letting them control you." Leonard turned back to Diane. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I'm tired of watching powerful people destroy anyone who tells the truth." She paused. "And because my daughter had the same heart defect as Valeria. She had surgery at Mercy 3 years ago. Same surgeon." Leonard's chest tightened. "Did it go well?" "She survived. But there were complications. Severe arrhythmia. 2 weeks in the ICU. The hospital said it was normal risk, but I read the research. I know what protocol they used, and I know it wasn't the safest option. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I was terrified. Because they saved her life, and I didn't want to seem ungrateful. Because I didn't have the training to challenge them." She met his eyes. "But you do." Leonard was quiet for a long time. "If I do this," he said, "they'll come after me harder." "Yes. And there's no guarantee we win." "No. But if we do win—" "If we do," Diane said, "it changes things. For your daughter. For other families. For every parent who's ever been told to trust the system when the system is broken." Leonard took a breath. "Okay. Okay? Let's do it." Diane extended her hand. Leonard shook it. And just like that, the fight began. The lawsuit was filed 3 days later. By the next morning, it was everywhere. Former surgical resident sues Mercy Children's Hospital, alleges dangerous protocol cover-up. The story didn't just break, it detonated. Diane had been strategic. She didn't just file paperwork. She released Leonard's residency records, letters from his attending physicians at Johns Hopkins, and peer-reviewed studies supporting everything he'd said at the gala. The The hospital's narrative crumbled overnight, but they didn't surrender. By noon, Mercy issued a statement calling the lawsuit baseless and defamatory. They described Leonard as a disgruntled former employee with a history of personal instability. No evidence, just insinuation. By evening, the coordinated attack began. An anonymous source told a tabloid that Leonard had left his residency due to erratic behavior. Another claimed he was facing financial ruin and saw the gala as an opportunity for a payout. The stories were vague, unverifiable, devastating. Leonard sat in his apartment, watching his life get shredded in real time. His phone buzzed. A text from Diane. "Don't read the comments, don't engage. Let me handle it." But the damage was already done. That night, Leonard tried to call Valeria. The nurse told him visiting hours were over. He asked if he could just speak to her for 1 minute. The nurse said she'd check. 10 minutes passed. Then a different voice came on the line. Administrative. Cold. Mr. Carter, given the current legal situation, all communication with patients involved in active litigation must be appropriately supervised and documented. She's my daughter. She's 6 years old. We understand, but we need to ensure everyone's protection. Supervised calls will be scheduled next week. The line went dead. Leonard stood in his kitchen, staring at the wall. They were cutting him off, not just from his job, from Valeria. He wanted to scream. He wanted to drive to the hospital and demand to see her. He wanted to break something, but he didn't, because that's what they wanted. They wanted him to lose control, to prove he was unstable. So instead, Leonard Carter sat down at his kitchen table and did the only thing he could. He wrote. He wrote down everything he remembered about the surgical protocol Dr. Sinclair had presented. Every flaw, every risk, every detail. He wrote down the names of former colleagues who might testify. He wrote down every document, every email, every piece of evidence that could prove he was telling the truth. It took him 6 hours. When he finished, he closed the notebook and set it on the table. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for every child who would walk into that hospital believing they were safe, when the system was designed to protect reputations instead of lives. And he wasn't going to stop. 7 days after the lawsuit was filed, Leonard's phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Carter?" "Yes. My name is Dr. Raymond Moss. I'm a pediatric cardiologist. I worked at Mercy Children's Hospital for 11 years. I left 3 months ago." Leonard sat up. "Why are you calling?" "Because I saw what you did at the gala, and I need you to know you're right." Leonard's breath caught. "About the procedure? About everything? Dr. Sinclair has been using that approach for years. I raised concerns multiple times. I was told to stop creating problems. Do you have documentation? Emails? Incident reports? Peer review notes? All of it. Why didn't you go public?" Dr. Moss was quiet for a moment. "Because I was afraid. I had a family, a mortgage, a reputation, and Mercy is powerful. They would have destroyed me. They're destroying me right now. I know. That's why I'm calling. I can't let you fight this alone. If you come forward, they'll come after you too. I already left. They can't hurt me the way they can hurt you. But together we have a chance. What do you need from me? Meet me. Tomorrow. I'll bring everything I have. Where? Somewhere public. Somewhere they can't intimidate us." They agreed on a location. The main branch of the Nashville Public Library. Neutral ground. When Leonard hung up, his hands were shaking. He wasn't alone anymore. The next day, Leonard and Dr. Raymond Moss sat in a quiet study room on the 3rd floor of the library. The table between them was covered in documents. Dr. Moss was late 50s, graying hair, the kind of exhausted eyes that came from watching too much and saying too little for too long. "This one," he said, sliding a printed email across the table, "is from 4 years ago. A 7-year-old boy developed severe post-op complications. Arrhythmia. Extended ICU stay. I flagged it. Recommended a protocol review. The response was to reassign me. Leonard read the email. The language was careful, clinical, but the message was clear. Stop asking questions. How many cases like this, Leonard asked, that I documented? 14. But I only had access to cardiac patients in my unit. There could be more. Leonard felt something cold settle in his chest. 14 children. 14 that I know of, and every time I raised it, I was told the same thing. Complications happen. Dr. Sinclair is one of the best. Trust the process. But the process was broken. Yes. Leonard leaned back. Why did you stay as long as you did? Because I convinced myself I could do more good from inside. That if I left, no one would be watching. He looked down at his hands. But the truth is, I was afraid. And kids paid the price for my silence. You're not silent now. No. But I'm late. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Dr. Moss pushed another document across the table. This is the one that made me leave. Leonard picked it up. Medical chart. 6-year-old girl. Ventricular septal defect repair. Anterior thoracotomy. Post-op complications. Arrhythmia, infection, prolonged ICU stay. At the bottom, a note. Patient outcome within acceptable parameters. No further review required. She almost died, Dr. Moss said quietly, and they called it acceptable. Leonard set the chart down carefully. We need to get this to Diane. I know, but there's something you need to understand first. What? The hospital knows I'm talking to you. They called me yesterday, reminded me of the NDA I signed when I left, told me if I share internal documents, they'll sue for breach of contract. Are you going to back down? Dr. Moss met his eyes. No, but you need to know what you're up against. This isn't just about one surgeon. It's about an institution that will do anything to protect itself. I know. Good. Dr. Moss stood. Then let's make sure they can't. They gathered the documents and left the library together. And for the first time since this began, Leonard felt like he had a real chance. 2 days later, Diane released Dr. Moss's documents to the press. The response was immediate and brutal. Whistleblower, doctor exposes pattern of complications at Mercy Children's Hospital. Internal emails show hospital ignored safety warnings for years. The hospital's carefully constructed defense shattered. By noon, protesters gathered outside Mercy's main entrance. Parents, former staff, advocacy groups. The live stream of the protest hit 800,000 viewers in the first hour. Dr. Victoria Sinclair issued a statement through her attorney. Brief, defensive. Dr. Sinclair stands by her record and is confident any review will confirm the integrity of her work, but the cracks were showing. That evening, Leonard's phone rang. Mr. Carter? This is Olivia Grant. I'm a producer for 60 Minutes. We'd like to interview you. Why? Because your story matters, and the public deserves to hear it from you. I don't want to be famous. This isn't about fame. It's about truth. Leonard looked out the window. The city lights blinked, indifferent. When? He asked. As soon as you're ready. The interview was scheduled for the following week, and Leonard knew that once it aired, there would be no turning back. The 60 Minutes interview took place in a small studio downtown. Leonard sat across from Rebecca Hall, a journalist who'd built a career on asking the questions no one else would. Mr. Carter, let's start at the beginning. You were a surgical resident at Johns Hopkins. Why did you leave? My wife was dying. I had a newborn daughter. I couldn't do both. And you became a janitor? Yes. At the hospital where your daughter is now a patient? Yes. Some have suggested your lawsuit is motivated by financial desperation. What do you say to that? Leonard met her eyes. I say those people don't know what it's like to watch your child need surgery and know the system designed to help her is broken. Is Mercy Children's Hospital broken? Parts of it. Yes. Can you explain? Leonard walked her through it. The surgical approach, the risks, the literature that contradicted what Dr. Sinclair had presented as optimal. Rebecca listened without interrupting. And you raised this at a public event. Why? Because I'd been silent for 5 years, and I couldn't stay silent anymore. What changed? My daughter is scheduled for surgery, the same surgery Dr. Sinclair presented. And I realized if I didn't speak up, I'd be complicit. Dr. Sinclair is one of the most respected pediatric surgeons in the country. Are you saying she's incompetent? No. I'm saying the protocol she uses is flawed, and the hospital has ignored warnings about it for years. Rebecca pulled out a document. We've obtained internal emails where Dr. Raymond Moss repeatedly raised concerns about complications. The hospital reassigned him. Does that sound like an institution committed to patient safety? No. What does it sound like? It sounds like an institution protecting itself. The interview aired the following Sunday. 26 million people watched. By Monday, the hospital was in full crisis. 3 major donors withdrew support. The state medical board opened an investigation. 2 surgeons publicly distanced themselves from Dr. Sinclair. And for the first time, the hospital blinked. That afternoon, Leonard received a call. Mr. Carter, this is Jonathan Pierce, interim CEO of Mercy Children's Hospital. I'd like to meet. Why? Because I think we can resolve this. Leonard called Diane immediately. Don't go alone, she said. He said just the 2 of us. And you believe him? Maybe. But if there's a chance to end this without dragging it out for months, fine. But I'm coming with you. The next day, Leonard and Diane walked into the executive offices of Mercy Children's Hospital. Jonathan Pierce was younger than Leonard expected. Mid-40s, sharp suit. The kind of calm that came from managing crises. Mr. Carter, Ms. Espinoza, thank you for coming. They sat. I'll be direct. The hospital is prepared to settle. Diane's expression didn't change. Terms, full reinstatement, back pay, formal apology, and a commitment to review all cardiac protocols within 6 months. And in exchange, Mr. Carter drops the lawsuit. No further public statements. Leonard felt something cold settle in his chest. You want me to stay quiet. I want to end this before more people get hurt. People are already hurt. Pierce's jaw tightened. We're taking this seriously. That's why we're offering settlement. You're offering settlement because you're afraid. Maybe. But the offer stands. Your daughter gets the surgery she needs. Best care we can provide. No delays. Leonard stared at him. You're using my daughter as leverage. I'm offering you a solution. No. Leonard stood. You're offering me a bribe. Pierce leaned back. Think about what you're risking. If this goes to trial, it could take years. Your daughter doesn't have years. Then maybe you should fix the problem instead of silencing the people who point it out. Pierce's face hardened. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's mine to make. Leonard turned and walked out. Outside, Diane grabbed his arm. Are you sure? Leonard looked back at the building where his daughter lay waiting. No, he said. But I'm sure about what's right. The trial began 4 months later. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, families, advocates. Dr. Victoria Sinclair sat with her legal team, composed, untouched by the storm around her. Leonard sat beside Diane and Dr. Moss. Judge Margaret Calloway called the court to order. This is a civil case. The plaintiff alleges wrongful termination and systemic negligence. The defense has filed a motion to dismiss. We'll hear arguments. The hospital's attorney stood. Your Honor, this case is built on misunderstanding. Mr. Carter is not a medical professional. He left his residency and hasn't practiced since. His claims are based on outdated research and personal grievance. Diane stood. Your Honor, Mr. Carter completed 2 years at one of the most prestigious programs in the country. His concerns are supported by current literature and corroborated by a former attending at Mercy. This is whistleblower retaliation. Judge Calloway looked at both attorneys. Does the plaintiff have evidence? Yes, Your Honor. Then we proceed. Motion denied. The courtroom erupted. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Diane called witness after witness, parents, medical experts, Dr. Moss, who laid out years of ignored warnings, The defense was technical, procedural, designed to obscure. Then, on the final day, Diane called Leonard to the stand. He sat calmly, hands folded. "Mr. Carter, explain what you saw at the gala." He did, precisely, without emotion. "Why did you speak up?" Leonard looked at the courtroom, at the families, at Valeria, sitting in the front row beside a nurse. "Because my daughter is 6 years old," he said quietly, "and she deserves a system that puts her safety above its reputation." Silence. The hospital's attorney stood for cross-examination. "Mr. Carter, isn't it true you resigned from your residency?" "Yes. My wife was dying. And now you're suing the hospital trying to save your daughter." "I'm suing the hospital that's protecting a broken system." No further question. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous, in favor of Leonard Carter. The courtroom exploded. Judge Calloway banged her gavel. "You find the hospital engaged in retaliatory termination and systemic negligence?" "Yes, Your Honor." "The hospital is ordered to reinstate Mr. Carter with full back pay. Additionally, a comprehensive review of all cardiac protocols will be conducted by an independent board and made public." She looked at Dr. Sinclair. "The medical board will determine further action." The gavel came down. Leonard sat in silence. He had won. But the fight wasn't over. 3 days after the verdict, Leonard's phone rang at dawn. "Mr. Carter, this is the office of Dr. Sarah Chen. She's the new head of cardiac surgery at Mercy. She'd like to personally oversee Valeria's procedure. No charge. Full team. Best possible care." Leonard couldn't speak. And that was just the beginning. Within 24 hours, 3 prominent surgeons offered pro bono consultations. A children's advocacy group covered all post-op care. Donations poured in from across the country. But the most important call came from the hospital itself. "Mr. Carter, this is Jonathan Pierce. We'd like to offer you a position on our patient safety board. We need people who aren't afraid to tell the truth." Leonard was quiet for a long moment. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." Valeria's surgery was scheduled for the following week. Dr. Chen explained everything. The new protocol, the updated approach, the one Leonard had fought for. On the morning of the surgery, Leonard sat beside Valeria's bed. "Daddy," she whispered, "are you scared?" "A little. Me too." "That's okay. Being scared means you're brave enough to do something hard. You're brave, Dad. So are you." The nurses came. Leonard kissed her forehead and watched as they wheeled her away. Then he sat in the waiting room and waited. 8 hours later, Dr. Chen emerged. The surgery was perfect. No complication. "She's going to be fine." Leonard broke down. Not from fear, from relief. 3 hours later, Valeria woke in recovery. Leonard sat beside her, holding her hand. "Daddy," she whispered, "you did it. We did it." And for the first time in 5 years, Leonard felt whole. 18 months later, Leonard stood in the main auditorium of Mercy Children's Hospital. He wasn't there to clean. He was there to speak. The hospital had invited him to address the annual staff meeting. Nurses, doctors, administrators, everyone. Leonard stepped to the podium. "My name is Leonard Carter. Some of you know me as the janitor who sued this hospital. Others know me as the father who wouldn't stay quiet." He paused. "I'm both. And I'm here because what happened to me shouldn't happen to anyone. Not the retaliation, not the silencing, not the fear that telling the truth will cost you everything." He looked out at the crowd. This hospital has changed. Not because of me. Because enough people decided that protecting patients matters more than protecting reputations. Applause started, slowly. Then, louder. "We still have work to do, but we're doing it, together." After the speech, families approached him. Parents whose children had been helped by the new protocols. Staff who'd been afraid to speak up and now felt heard. One nurse gripped his hand. "You gave us permission to care out loud." Leonard smiled. "You always had permission. You just needed someone to go first." That evening, Leonard sat with Valeria on their apartment balcony. "Daddy, do you think things are better now?" Yeah, not perfect, but better. That's good. Leonard smiled, and as the city hummed below them, he thought about all the people out there fighting their own quiet battles, the invisible ones, the overlooked ones. They deserved to be seen. And because Leonard refused to stay silent, some of them were. Not all of them. Not yet. But more than before. And that was how change happened. One choice at a time. One person at a time. One act of courage at a time. Leonard looked at his daughter and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because he'd done what he could. And that was enough. If you've stayed with Leonard's story this far, thank you. This isn't just about one man. It's about what happens when ordinary people refuse to accept that the truth doesn't matter. Where are you watching this from? A hospital room? A quiet apartment? Somewhere in between? Drop a comment and let me know. Because your voice matters too. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit subscribe. See you in the next one.